So, about a week or so ago, I had finally covered a newer game on the channel by talking about Atelier Yumiya. And since I covered a recent RPG that came out, I thought to myself, why not make the next video another new one? So, we're going to be talking about Expedition 33 today. Now, if you've been on the online sphere at all these past few weeks, you know this game has garnered a lot of attention for being this immensely high-quality RPG made by a small team of people that feels like the level of quality most AAA studios are, supposed to be held to. And it's also attracted an immensely annoying fanbase that seems to think it's the second coming of turn-based RPGs, which if you played more than just Final Fantasy, you would know that's bullshit. Now, as for me, I really don't care what people are saying after I got my couple of jokes in on both sides' expenses. What really matters is what is the level of quality of this game, and after experiencing for myself, I want to talk about everything I thought was great and what I definitely think needed some fine-tuning. With that said, welcome to my review of Expedition 33, and why I think it's a flawed masterpiece. So let's start off as I usually do, talking about what this game does right. For this one, we're obviously going to focus on talking about its graphics, because this game looks goddamn beautiful. For a title made by a team of less than 50 people, it's genuinely incredible to me on how well the quality of graphics are in this game, to the point where they're equal to that of a AAA dev. Sandful Interactive definitely knew how to make this game look pretty, but I think its strongest aspect isn't exactly about how realistic it all looks, but more how it's able to take these realistic graphics and blend them in with surreal landscapes and, most importantly, its enemies. While the characters you interact with do look like humans, the areas you travel and enemies you encounter all look like something out of a fantasy novel. It's immensely impressive to me, as there wasn't a single moment in the entire game where I felt like any of this art style looked out of place or clashed with the human characters on screen. The people who worked on this genuinely understand art style in a way that I think a lot of AAA developers could take notes of, especially in the cutscene direction, because holy hell, the cutscenes are next fucking level. The impressive level of quality also drips down to the details and animation work as well. And while the movement in the overworld looks immensely impressive, it's at its best in the gameplay sections, where both the characters you control and the enemies you fight look stunning and insanely fluid whenever they're performing any sort of action. I love when games have that little extra amount of detail, as in my opinion, it shows that devs were putting immense amounts of effort into making this look as nice as possible. And while I could definitely go on and on and on about how goddamn insanely nice this looks, I'm not going to for two reasons. One, I don't want to have to spend too long on one section of video when there's so much more to talk about. And two, I genuinely think you should experience what it's like with your own eyes, because even me gushing about it cannot, under any circumstances, do it justice to just how jaw-dropping each shot is in this game. Okay, I'm gonna do it anyways, I'm so sorry, but I gotta gush about how good the lighting is in several of these areas, how fantastic the character designs are, how the developers completely understand the kind of audience they have when they constantly show Lune's feet. So many incredible aspects of this game's visuals that could be talked about for literal days if I felt like it. And I still kind of am. But I want to stop here and get into what my favorite part of this game was. And that was easily the combat. I'm certain everyone who's heard of this game knows by now that the combat is basically a callback to old school PS1 era RPGs due to the dev's love of those titles. He wanted to create a game similar to that, and to his credit, he really nailed it pretty well. He really understood what was so great about a lot of those original titles, and you definitely see how this game shares a lot of its original PS1 era DNA. Things like 3-team parties, a very heavy focus on equipment, special accessories that could boost your stats alongside giving you extra skills and passives to utilize in battle, through the items known as Pictos, which once you've mastered, you can use your Lumina points to set their passives as permanent buffs, which can make your characters even stronger and grant them special skills like being able to exceed the damage limit, increasing the amount of damage you do with a counterattack, or even something like coming back to life after getting killed. There are legit dozens, and I'm only scratching the surface of the Pictos you can use. So how do you get your hands on this? Well, mainly you can find them either through defeating enemies in the overworld, or through one of the strongest aspects of the game's designs, its emphasis on exploration. Expedition 33 is one of the first RPGs in a good long while that really pushed me to explore every nook and cranny of the map I visited, as the rewards are greatly worth it, as not only Pictos are found through doing this, but you can also find a plethora of other goodies, stuff like new weapons, or forging rocks to make your weapons stronger, collectible outfits to make your characters look different, and even some extra mini-bosses to get yourself some nice experience that can also come with a new weapon or Picto. And let me tell you, I adored every second of it. It's been so long since I've had an RPG that just genuinely incentivized me to look around as much as possible. You can really tell a lot of the devs who worked on this game did get that PS1 era of JRPG fun, where it was all about rewarding you with things like new dungeons and boss fights if you were willing to spend about 10 or so more minutes looking in areas you didn't before. And to make it even crazier, this was Sandfalls Interactive's first ever attempt at this. If it's this good now, imagine what it's going to be like in the future. I am so excited to see what the next one is like, if they can just apply what they learned here and bring it to the next level. Alright, that's enough glazing for now. What should we get back to? Oh yeah, the combat. Now, while stuff like this and the Luminas are definitely important in the grand scheme of gameplay, the biggest focus for Expedition 33 is its massive emphasis on the utilization of dodges and parries in battle. Every single fight in this game is going to be you memorizing an enemy's attack pattern and choosing whether to dodge or parry. So not only can you get out of fights without taking any damage, but if you master the parry system, you can actively launch devastating counterattacks that severely drain your opponent's health. Also, I highly recommend putting an emphasis on mastering the parries over the dodge. Not only do parries just feel way better to utilize in comparison to dodging everything, but like I said earlier, they can become immensely useful game changers in dealing damage to bosses. An example is that at the start of the game, there's a picto you can get that gives you plus 50% to your attack power. An amazingly useful early game accessory to get your hands on. But in order to get it, you gotta beat a boss that doesn't take a whole lot of damage from your normal attacks. So the best way to deal with him is to learn his patterns, and then parry him so you can launch a devastating hit to cut down a chunk of his health bar. I love that the devs included this because it not only does it allow you to master the parry system, but the extra picto means that there's something genuinely in it for you. In fact, they do this again later down the line when you fight another optional super boss that's all about teaching you how to jump over attacks and parry. And that's not even talking about once you start to get to gradient parries, which end up adding another new layer to gameplay. There's just so much here, man. It's phenomenal. And while it sounds like these are my favorite aspects of Expedition 33, they actually aren't. My favorite part of the gameplay is how every single party member has their own specific gimmick and style to play with. A couple examples of this are one of the characters known as Mael having a stance-based style of gameplay where, depending on the stance she's using, it can actually let you do more damage or give you more defense. Then there's the main man Gustav, whose skills are, depending on how many times you've dodged or parried an enemy, you can build up a 10-point gauge that lets you deal heavy amounts of damage based on the amount of times you've executed a parry or dodge correctly. And then there's Verso, a character that you meet in the second act of the game, whose whole mechanic basically works like Devil May Cry, where the better you're doing in battle, the more damage you actively start dealing to the enemies. It's downright fucking fantastic. I love this shit so much. I loved mixing and matching teams to see what crazy techniques they can pull off, not only by themselves, but in conjunction with each other's. And once you finally win the battle and get a level up, you can spend the accumulated points you get at expedition flags in order to increase one of 5 different stats, alongside using points to unlock new skills to make your character stronger. It's a gameplay loop that, while suffering from a couple minor issues, is overall an immensely solid experience, and honestly my favorite gameplay loop of this year so far. All of which is utilized super well, as once you beat the game and start exploring the rest of the world in the hopes of finding some of the super bosses, which will kick your ass if you're not ready, I know from experience. It becomes easily some of the best post-game content we've gotten this year. And that's really all I have to say about gameplay. So let's get into talking about the story and its characters. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into story here, since this game did just release and I want to do this as spoiler-free as possible. But without revealing too much, I have to say that I really like the narrative. It starts off this big adventure to defeat the Paintress, so they no longer have to live in fear of the upcoming events known as the Gromage. I think I'm saying that right. I still suck at pronouncing it. Sorry, it's the French. And more importantly, they want to bring an end to the expedition that's claimed so many lives in the past. And while that stuff is great, I think the game is at its best in Act 3 when it becomes a lot more personal in the storytelling, and that is where the narrative is at its best. Without going on too much here, there's this big twist later on, and it shifts from this big expedition battle adventure to a much more personal drama, and I think that's where the narrative stays its most gripping. Not to say the story itself doesn't have like maybe 1 or 2 problems, as there were definitely a couple of moments where I wasn't super impressed, but overall, I think the narrative itself is really fucking good. Same goes with the characters, who are a lot more endearing than I expected them to be. I'd say my personal favorite in terms of writing is either Mael or Verso. I pretty much liked all of them, honestly. Lune started off as this aloof mage, but I really liked how she grew closer to the rest of the cast, especially Ciel, as I feel like they had a really interesting bond in the camping section of the game. Monaco is arguably the funniest character in the title, as several moments between him and the gas usually just had me laughing, just because of how much of an idiot and battle maniac he can be.
No distraction, son. I'm really busy beating up strangers. You again.
There will be a lot of fighting, man.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's true.
There will be a lot of fighting.
Exactly.
Count me in then.
Good.
Good.
Honestly, every character in this game is great. It's nice to have a cast that just feels so relatively chill and human at the same time. There was just a natural ebb and flow to every time they were interacting with each other that it genuinely impressed me. It's hard to find games that capture just how earnest a group of friends can be. And Expedition 33 does it super well. I really don't have anything else to say about the story and characters outside of they're both really good. So let's get into this game's final slam dunk, and that's its absolutely stellar soundtrack. Composed by French composer Laurent Testard, a creator that, believe it or not, was found on SoundCloud of all things. Yeah, to put this in perspective, a SoundCloud music creator made the soundtrack, and it's insane. Like, I know it sounds like I'm making fun of them or something, but I'm genuinely not. I am blown the fuck away by just how good of a job he did for his first ever major video game after coming off of SoundCloud. If I had to pick a single track that I think was the best out of all of them, it would have to be the final battle with Renor in Act 2, as that battle had the erection of craziness from it, and ooh god did it feel so good to listen to. It might actually be my favorite music track of the year, next to the final boss of Daybreak 2, that is. And that's some immensely high praise if you know how much I fuck with the music of Daybreak, and especially Trails. But I do have to say this, we're now at the end of the pros. So now it's time we got onto the cons. You know, the more I work on this video, the more pleased I am with just how high quality of a product Sandfall Interactive put out for what seems to be their first ever game. They get an immense amount of things right with this title, and I'm very happy to see how well this team did, as it says only increase the further on we get. But even with all that I loved about this title, admittedly, I did have some issues, so let's talk about those now. Now, I have zero issues with how this game looks. I have made that very clear in the pro section, so we're going to skip over that and go into my complaints about gameplay instead. Now, I think the gameplay of Expedition 33 is absolutely fantastic. There are really only 3 issues I think it ended up having. The first being that parry windows can sometimes be a little on the wonky side. Now, this is a very minor complaint because you can easily just master the timing of the attacks instead of just looking at them instead. But I do remember in certain fights, I ended up losing one of my party members because the timing looked like it was supposed to make it, but it just didn't because of how the attack was shot. I still ended up missing because the timing is weird. Again, this is something you can easily get used to, but admittedly it is something that's a little hard to get used to at the very start. Another complaint I had with this game was just how it kind of drowns you in the Lumina shards. Like, I am all for the fact that you can collect these so you can activate more passives in battle, but the game just makes them so easy to get your hands on because they're just fucking everywhere. You buy them from several shops. You find them scattered throughout every map. You basically have a surplus of them due to how many you can find. I remember at one point I stopped using them for a couple of hours and just picking them up, and when I went to start dumping them, I had like 50 in reserve as a result. Kind of needed a little holding back on this one, guys, just saying. And that other reserve of Lumia kind of leads to another issue where, as a result, the game just starts getting super unbalanced. Don't get the wrong idea, it can be immensely fun to just one-shot certain bosses. But yeah, the game becomes way too easy the further in you get. If I could compare it to any other franchise I've played so far, I'd actually say it's very similar to the gameplay issue something like Trails has, where the gameplay itself is immensely fun and the customization is downright badass, but the heavy amounts of customization basically just let you absolutely wreak havoc and destroy everything in your path without really breaking a sweat. Hell, I'd even go out on a limb here and say it's even more broken than Trails is due to just how overpowered the parry becomes. It's immensely fun, but immensely broken. With all that said, let's move on to my issues with story. Now, if I have to be real, I only have 2 issues with the story. For one, Act 2 is kind of the weakest part of the narrative. It's not bad by any means, I still liked it, but one of its issues is that a lot of that act's bigger twists you can kinda see coming, because they're not exactly fantastic at hiding it. This is the first game, so I'm gonna do him a favor and cut him a little slack with how easy it was to pick up on some of the narrative twists, but when you get them back to back and you're just able to guess what's going to happen, it starts taking a little energy out of the story. And the other issue was one of the main antagonists, known as the Paintress. Well, she wasn't that interesting. Like, once you beat her and learn her backstory, she gets a bit better, but compared to somebody like Renor, who has not only way more screen presence, but actual motives discussed throughout the second and third act, I found him way more entertaining. It also helps that this guy's boss fights are some of the best in the entire repertoire. And with all of that out of the way, I don't really have anything else to say for complaints. Not a whole lot to talk about here. The game was just immensely high quality, so I think it's rather cool that I don't have a lot to talk about, don't get me wrong. But, you know what, I'm just wasting time here. Let's get to the final thoughts. So we finally reached the end of the video. And I gotta say, even with a few hiccups along the way, Expedition 33 was an amazing experience. It's not perfect, and it's definitely not the savior of RPGs like so many of its more embarrassing fans say it is. But it's one damn good game, and it's definitely a Game of the Year contender for me personally. That's why my final rating for this game is a very positive 9 out of 10. And I'm certain that side of the fan base will be very respectful about the fact that I gave it a 9 out of 10. We've seen how respectful they are, so who knows. But hey, at the same time, who gives a fuck what those guys think? I care about you cool viewers. And if you like this video and want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe down below. We're on the way to 1K, and I think we can do it this year. Hit the bell for some notifications for when my videos go up. Leave a comment down below to help me in the algorithm, or if you just want to chat. Come check out my streams on Twitch, or join the Discord if you want to hang out with my chill community. And most importantly, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time for more RPG content.